Hello, one and all, and welcome to the podcast we call the Fantastival with myself, Steve Nussbaum, in the podcast where I invite my guests to come on and talk to me all about their musical taste, their memories and their experience, and they also get to collate their fantasy festivals, which I have christened Fantastivals. We are now on episode number 117, almost at February already. What a mental year 2023 has been so far, but it's been fantastic, and thanks to everyone who has listened to the Fantastival podcast so far this year. And a massive thank you to Matt McManaman, who was my guest in the last episode of the podcast. I had such good fun talking to Matt, a great guy. He's a great artist. He done a fantastic fantasy festival lineup. So if you've not listened, please go back and listen to that one. I had so much fun, so many laughs and so many great stories were had in that one. So that was 116. Today is 117, and I'm delighted this week to be joined by Ross from AdoredClubUK.com. So Ross, welcome to the Fantastival Podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to going through. Like I was saying to you just before, it's very difficult to pick these. So I've agonised over this. It's taken me a lot of time, but I'm looking forward to going through my choices.
I love it. I love hearing about how difficult people have found the Fantasy Festival lineup choice. I'm looking forward to seeing who you pick, knowing about how passionate Adored is about music and how many great club nights and gigs they put on. I'm sure it's going to be a Fantasy Festival lineup to remember. But Ross, before we talk about music, like I said, I'm looking forward to, I always like to check in with my guests to find out how they've been from like a mental health perspective. I think that's really important for people just to say, like, how are you? So as a starting point, Ross, how are you, mate? I'm
good. I'm sound. Can't complain. I mean, it's been fucking cold, but can't do anything about that. And as I also said just before, I was out at a venue's birthday party last night, so I had a few drinks. I'm feeling a little bit delicate today, but I'm all right.
Getting through it. Well, hopefully this turns out to be your perfect hangover cure. So by the end of this, the hangover's gone and you'll be ready for your next pint or whatever it is you like to drink. So Ross, before we start, tell us a bit about yourself. So who is Ross from AdoredClubUK.com?
It's funny you say that because it reminds me of something one of your previous guests, Indie Rob, said. I was at a gig that he put on for his virtual pub crawl in Manchester. And I realised that kind of he was introducing me to loads of people, and they were going, I know Adored. And he said, trouble is, no one knows who you are because you're a brand. Whereas with him, He was in Indie Rob. But I think that's the way I've always kind of wanted it, really. I'm not saying Indie Rob's about, he's got a big ego. I love him to bits, but I wanted to create something that, whether it was me DJing or someone else, or it's a bigger, it's got a scale. And I didn't know where it could go when I first started, but yeah, I'm someone who's incredibly passionate, mostly about the Manchester music scene. I think that comes across very much from the branding around Adored and stuff. But I think we'll probably tap into some of it later on. But I've got a very eclectic, wide taste. But yeah, my real core stuff is the kind of Manchester baggy era.
So how did Adored start? And what I know it was founded in 2018, but how did it get off the ground?
Do you know what? It was something I meant to get around to doing for years and years. And I was London's got quite a good club night scene. There's the likes of Indie Disco, Dance Yourself Clean, which is around LCD Sound System. There's New Order nights. There's Star Shape. There's all sorts of great club nights around London. I've been going to them for years, and I just thought I could do that. And I wanted to put on the night that I would want to go to. So it was the sort of thing I love is when if you go to a club night, and I'll give you an example. I went to an Oasis one once, and someone was playing Mucky Fingers. Yes, that's it. Don't just play Don't Look Back in Anger. Play those ones for the fans. So if you're at a night and there's something obscure off Technique, you go, that's it. Playing it for the real fans. So yeah, it was something I was really passionate in in starting something. I wanted something that I could call my own. So anyway, never got around to it, and then COVID happened. So it was actually during Tim Burgess listening parties, I decided I wanted somewhere to go and kind of create a little space, go and listen to an album, get involved on Twitter and stuff like that. So I carved out a little corner of my garage. I just put a dartboard up there, a little disco light, had a few cans, listened to some music. And the garage was an absolute shithole. It was just full of, garage stuff. And eventually, bit by bit, I made more and more of a space, put another light in, did something else, and then I've got like a little bar here. Next thing, I'm building a bar. I've got smoke machines, lasers, a DJ booth, and it kind of created a little place to get away and make you feel. I mean, you mentioned the kind of mental health aspect at the beginning. It felt like in that time where you couldn't go anywhere, it felt like I was having a night out, just popping into my garage. And you actually, to get to the garage, you have to leave the back door and then go into the back door of the garage. So it literally felt like, all right, I'm going out tonight. So that was quite cool. And then Magic Mod, who's a friend of mine and at the time lived locally, we wanted to, obviously it was tough for him because he couldn't do any gigs, so he wasn't getting paid or anything like that. So we thought, just to get his exposure out there a little bit and have something to do, like a lot of people did, created podcasts, did live stream DJ sets, those sorts of things. I worked out, well, this is how we could do it. We've got a great set for it here. So that was the first one we did, Magic Mod live DJ set. And then I thought, well, fuck it, I've got the infrastructure here, so now I'll just I'll use the Adored brand that I had in my head for years and years, and then launch it with like New Order nights. And we did themes around particular bands. So it could be a whole night dedicated to the Stone Roses, or a whole night dedicated to Oasis or New Order. These days, when if I dabble in a stream now and then, it's a bit more broad and eclectic. But back then, I build it as this whole night for a particular band, and we tried to make it, again, as authentic as possible. So I did an Oasis night. You start with Fucking in the Bushes, rock and roll start. You kind of make it a bit like a live experience when people couldn't go to gigs at the time.
Great stuff. And then obviously the brand has grown and grown. You're very active on Twitter. I can see there's club nights. Now that lockdown's over, you're doing it in quite established venues in London. From what I've seen, you're putting on gigs. So it's really gone from strength to strength, right? So there's so much going on at the moment. Yeah,
I mean, as soon as proper venues started opening up again, I kind of seized my opportunity to get in there. Like I said, I had loads of friends across London in the music scene, and I've had some incredible support, and a big one, he probably won't ever listen to this, but a guy called Marcus, who looks after all the kind of events at places like Shackle Arms, Waiting Room and the Lexington. I couldn't have got it off the ground without his support. He's been absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, we did our first big club night was at the Lexington, and we had Phil Smith, obviously former Oasis tour DJ. He DJ'd with us, and that was really good. We've had Dermo putting on his first solo London gig. We've got Gaz Whelan from Mondays playing, but we've had to postpone that date because he's had some visa issues, so he's stuck in Canada at the moment. But yeah, club nights, gigs. We've done a few acid house nights at a bar called The Social, which is one of my favourite bars in the world. It's been amazing, and I love playing music to people anyway. For me, again, it's not about Ross the DJ. It's never about putting my name out there, but just that enjoyment of sharing, I suppose, music with people and seeing that reaction when you play a particular song and being able to control a dance floor and see how it ebbs and flows. And yeah, it's been really good, and we've got some really bold plans for the future as well.
And talking of the future, Saturday the 25th of February, I've got to mention it because we had their frontman on this very podcast. He was great fun. It was great to chat to him. We've got the Shed Project making their London debut at the Water Rats.
That's going to be a massive one. We've got MC Tunes, Laurie Wright as well, so got some great support. Shed Project are going to blow the roof off the place. It's going to be fucking brilliant. So that's going to be a really, really good night. Water Rats as well was the first London venue that Oasis played at as well. So a bit of history for the venue. But yeah, that got off to a flyer. I'm pretty sure that's going to sell out, but that's going to be a brilliant gig. And again, just the pleasure of working with people like Dermo, with the Shed Project and Gaz, especially when I'm talking to people that I was a fan of. I was a fan of Northside, fan of Mondays, and now I'm putting on their gigs and stuff. And Roy's a top geezer as well. I've been following the Shed Project for the last couple of years, so it's a real honour to be me that puts those gigs on, and I represent London. And yeah, I'm a Cockney Red. I'm a United fan. I'm not a Manc, but I've created a little outpost of Manchester down here in London.
Great stuff. So if anyone's listening and isn't aware of Adored, I'm sure they will be, but if anyone's listening and isn't, where's the best place for people to go and find out information about Adored? Where would you direct them to?
I guess I'd probably tweet more than anything else. Facebook's just dead these days. We've got about 1,700 followers on Facebook at the moment, but yeah, you post something and you have about 3 eyeballs on it. But Twitter at AdoredClubUK. In fact, to be fair, that's the same for Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. And AdoredClubUK.com is the website. So I guess if you're in the London or South area, keep an eye on what we're doing, whether it's a Manchester club night, acid house, old school rave stuff, or some of the gigs that we're going to be putting on. And then, check us out.
Great stuff. Lots of great things happening for you. I'm looking forward to seeing where 2023 takes the brand. So, Ross, you've spoken about music so far, how important it is to you. But, I mean, what kind of... I guess it might be quite obvious depending on the bands you've just spoken about, but kind of what music are you into?
Yeah, like I said, I always say my core is bands like Roses, Oasis, Happy Mondays, New Order. I've got some guilty pleasures in there as well. A bit of Miley Cyrus. only one album, which is one that was pretty much predominantly written by the Flaming Lips, which they might come up later on. But yeah, I like soul, funk, some hip hop, trip hop, a lot of big beat stuff. Rave, acid house. I've got quite an eclectic taste. But yeah, if I really had to, if it was a desert island thing and I could only take a few bands with me, then I'm taking the Manchester bands with me.
Great stuff. So, anything at the moment that you're listening to? So, obviously, I mentioned Matt, last week's guest. He mentioned Paul Westerberg, and I'm a massive Replacements fan. So, I've gone down another Westerberg rabbit hole and loads of Replacement stuff. So that's kind of my thing at the moment. What about you, Ross? And it can be whether old or new. What are you listening to at the moment, mate?
Well, bit of a shout out to a mate as well, Ashley Stacey. He's well worth getting on the podcast at some point as well. Top dude. His new single's coming out tonight, midnight, and it's the best thing he's done, and I can't stop listening to it. It's absolutely quality. There was another one as well. I'm trying to look for the name of it, but I can't remember. I saw them, they were playing at Lexington High School, I think they were, and I think they're from Australia, but this gig, I wasn't there, but I just saw it on their stories, and I was chatting to the promoter who put it on last night, and it really went off. The crowd were absolutely mad, but they've got a song that sounds exactly like New Order, Age of Consent. And they sound really, really cool. Obviously, Shed Project, I love. Vega Rally, Pastel, Afflex, they're pretty cool. So yeah, I think there's the last few years, and especially during COVID, there's been a real emergence of guitar bands again. I still think we're just waiting for one big band that's like Oasis lit up the scene. They came swaggering along. I think there needs to be something like that comes along that shatters the scene, and they've got something to say and a bit of arrogance about them. I don't really think we've seen that yet, but I think there's an awful lot of great bands out there now.
Yeah, one of the best things about doing this podcast is that I liked what I liked, really, and that was it. Whereas this podcast has opened my eyes to so many great talents like the Shed Project, like Arcade State, like Sylvie, like Distant. And there's so many, and not just in London, just around the UK in general. And you listen to some of the stuff, you're like, how is this not bigger than what it is compared to some of the stuff you hear on the radio? Like, well, how is this on the radio, and how is something that's only had 1,000, not even 1,000 streams, not even getting the opportunity? So something that's definitely opened my eyes from doing this podcast. So
weirdly, it's a bit regional again, which you wouldn't think would be how things would go with the internet. But I mean, even bands, this isn't obviously a small band, but Cortinas, they're fucking huge in Manchester. Yeah. I don't really see them being that big down in the south. Obviously they're still big, but not as in Manchester. They go nuts for them. And it's interesting to see that you might have some bands that are based in the north will absolutely sell out the north. So I think there's a good strong word of mouth outside of social media going on as well. But yeah, to your point, doing the live streams was massively eye-opening as well. So I do it on Twitch, so there's a comments bit, people can come in and the chat, and it built this really lovely community. There's probably about 10 to 20 regulars that still come on. If I do want last minute on a Friday, I just decide I'm going to go and play some music. These people will come out. We have a really nice chat. Sometimes goes on to like 1, 2 in the morning. But yeah, we're always sharing new bands and what we're listening to, and I'll often play them. Again, I know people like Indie Rob's done a great job at sharing new bands. That's something that I wanted to try and do. It's great playing I Am the Resurrection for the 14th time, but it's also brilliant being able to play new bands. So I've been fortunate on the Adored live streams where I've been able to do kind of global exclusive plays of Shed projects when they've had a new tune. I've been the first to play it, or Ashley Stacey has given me that exclusive a couple of times, things like that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff about. And
Twitch is that just as and when you feel. So there's no set time for Twitches to go live. That's just as and when.
No, it's only if I'm basically, if I'm not going out, if I'm at home on a Friday evening, and it's been a long week at work, and I think I could do with a couple of cans of Red Stripe. Does anyone want to listen to any music? So I literally normally just stick out a tweet saying, anyone fancy a live stream? And normally like 9, 10 o'clock at night. Obviously, I spend most of my efforts going into putting actual club nights on. So this Saturday, for example, we're doing, it's called a New Order Joy Division Club Night, but it's basically going to be all Factory Records stuff. Obviously, other Manchester bands at the Strong Room Bar in Shoreditch. Done about 300 tickets for that, so I'm really looking forward to that on Saturday.
Yeah, really cool. Obviously, this will go out the day after, so I hope your head's not too sore when you're listening back to this. And you go, that was a great night, actually. I called that one perfectly.
But honestly, it ends up, it's work. You know, you end up, obviously, I have a lot of fun with them, but I'm constantly thinking about, you know, what I'm going to play next, how I'm making the dance floor move and stuff. That, you know, I end up not drinking as much, I suppose. There's been a couple that I have. We did a night, This Is Acid, at the Social, and in fairness, it was towards the end of the night, and I had a great co-DJ, my mate Mitch, who actually works at the Social as well, and thank God he was there, because by the end of the night, everything was just blurry. I couldn't mix at all. I lost the ability for any beat matching. I was just hammering buttons, and I went, Mitch, you fucking take over now. And he saved me ass, but yeah.
So Ross, I always like to get my guests' first single or first album of that experience. Do you remember what yours was and where you bought that?
Oh no. Early memories of music. I remember it wasn't the first album I had, obviously, but the one that I really remember feeling the anticipation about it coming out was Be Here Now, because there was that was one of the most anticipated albums, I think, ever. Massively selling. And I think there was some stat, it was the second most or first most bought at a car boot sale about a year or so later. But yeah, Be Here Now, I really remember that. And it was a really hot summer, I think. And I just remember knocking about on my bike, listening to Be Here Now, which was cool. But yeah, before that, lots of memories of being in the car with my dad, and music was always on, whether it's, he listened to a lot of Pet Shop Boys and Erasure, stuff like that. So I was always quite into the kind of dancey electronic stuff. To be fair, I don't think it was my dad's influence. I think that was my brother influencing my dad and me listening to it in the car. And then as I got older, my brother, who's 10 years older than me, becomes a massive part of shaping my music. I remember when I was 10 years old and he was passing me down tapes, and the other kids at school, I think I said the same story on the Oasis podcast a couple of years ago. Other kids at school, I was the odd one out for listening to guitar. What's his guitar music you're listening to? So I was listening to Oasis when I was 10, and 2 years later, every fucker is listening to Oasis, and I was like, wow, there you go, I was there first. But yeah, so it was my brother was a massive influence over my music taste. There's an LCD sound system, and if you listen, I'm sure you'll listen to this, so this is quite funny. There's an LCD sound system tune which goes, I was there, and I always take the piss out of my brother because he's constantly telling me stories. I was there in Nebworth, I was there at GMX in 1988, and now I'm getting older, and I find, if I meet younger people that come to my club nights and stuff like that, I'm that old person now. I was there when Ian Brown played the Stone Roses stuff for the first time, so it all gets handed down.
It certainly does, my friend. It certainly does. I remember being the youngling at HMV, I'm one of the old boys, but what can you do? Time flies when you're having fun. So Ross, this podcast is all about you getting to collect your fantasy festival. Are you a big fan of festivals? Have you been to many?
No. No, I do. I just fucking hate camping. So like proper festivals, Glastonbury, wallowing around in mud, that's not me. Never. But things like Blue Dot, I absolutely love. Very, very commercial, but all points east, which, I think if you stand still for 5 minutes, they'll slap an advert on you. But the lineups have been mega the last years. Like last year was Chemical Brothers and Kraftwerk, for example. So those kind of, I think, city-ish day festivals, weekend festivals where there's no fucking camping involved, then I'm all for it, because I like the kind of mix of different genres, different bands. You might have it raving off in a tent somewhere with some house tunes, and you might have a guitar band over there. So yes, but not swimming around in mud.
And without giving away too much or spoiling anything, do you have a favourite gig that you've been to? Your brother obviously mentioned Nebworth. That's pivotal moment in most people's lives, mine included, because I was there as well, because I'm an old git. What about you, though? Do you have a favourite gig that you can talk about without spoiling your fantasy festival lineup?
There's too many. I couldn't pick one because there's loads and they're all for different reasons. Seeing the Stone Roses in Madison Square Gardens, stepping out to blazing hot New York City was absolutely fucking breathtaking. Like I said, Claremont Gardens saw Ian Brown. I'm pretty sure it was the first time he ever played Stone Roses stuff as a solo act. Obviously, numerous Oasis gigs. I mean, even I'd say Liam Gallagher at Finsbury Park was one of my favourites for being so terrible for getting drinks from the bar, but it made for a great story because one of my mates ended up being a hero. He just disappeared. Where the fuck's he gone? Came back with a whole load of pints. And I don't know how he managed to do it because no one got a fucking drink at Finsbury Park. Stone Roses at Wembley. Got Oasis at Albert Hall, the Teenage Cancer Trust gigs, real unique little things like that. So there's just so many great moments that I've been to that I couldn't pick one.
Fair enough.
So fair enough. A bit of a boring answer, but yeah.
Mate, I remember those Teenage Cancer Trust gigs. They were always, back in the day anyway, like a phenomenal gig. I remember me and my mate went to see Richard Ashcroft, and his support acts were labelled as like mystery guests. And you might have even been there. And his mystery guests were basically, you remember this, right? So it was basically Noel and Liam, and then they brought out Weller, who brought out Kelly Jones, who brought out Pete Townsend, and there were just loads of them on the stage. And by the time Ashcroft came out, it almost felt like a bit of a letdown, really, because you'd seen this massive supergroup of...
Ashcroft's never a letdown. He's always biblical. But I think it was the year before, and it was Ashcroft doing an acoustic set, Black Road Motorcycle Club, and then Oasis. And that night they played, this was 2001, so it was before Even Chemistry came out, and they played Hung in a Bad Place and Hindu Times before anyone else had ever heard them. So again, that's another reason why that night was particularly special, because it was unique. It wasn't just another night of a tour. It was something different that happened.
Yeah, that must have been a great gig. There's some great gigs spoken about, and yeah, hopefully there'll be many more. So like I said at the top of this podcast, this is all about getting Ross to collate his fantasy festival. So Ross gets to choose any 5 acts, one of whom must play one of their studio albums in full, and Ross gets to pick an encore which all of his 5 acts can perform together at the end of his fantasy festival. So for any first time listeners, this is a very simple concept. 5 acts take 5 time slots. So in the last episode of this podcast, I had Matt McManaman, and he created his McManifest Fantasy Festival, which I loved. It was a great title, and he went for bands just from his youth. So in his opening act, he picked Operation Ivy. In his Super Seconds act, he picked the Mr. T Experience. In his Midway Madness slot, he picked Paul Westerberg, and for him to play Suicane Gratification in full. For pre-headliners, he went for the Ramones, and for his headline act, he went for Green Day. And for his encore, he had them all perform London Calling. So it's very, very simple. But before we get to talk about your 5 acts, Ross, we've got to name your fantasy festival and give it a venue. So Ross, what are you going to call your fantasy festival, mate?
I'm going to call it, and my brother will laugh at this, Nostalgia is a Disease. The reason why, I'm not great at naming things. In fact, I have a bit of regret over the name Adored, because I just think I kind of rushed it out. It was an early thought, and then when I needed a name, I had the name for years. So the name Adored goes back to probably about 2016, 17. But it was just, I hadn't launched anything. I'd just done some graphics, and this is what my club night would look like if I get the venues and stuff like that. And then, like I said earlier, needed to do something for live streams. So I'll dig out the Adored name. I've got graphics and logos and stuff for that already. But, having done it for a few years now, it's just a bit obvious, I think. And it maybe even pigeonholes the kind of Manchester thing a bit too much. So I think what we do is great. I think what Adored does is great, but the name's shit. So I'm not going to call my festival Adored. There's also a few other Adoreds up and down the country as well. So there's always a bit of confusion there. There's Manchester Adored as well, which put on tribute acts and stuff. So anyway, I did a acid house / rave, basically from Chicago house up to big beat stuff night at the Social. And I needed a name for it. And I don't know where my brother got it from, but he had this name, Nostalgia is a Disease, I think, for a club night for years, and I nicked it off him. And he still wants a cut from that club night, even though it didn't do much money. But yeah, I think it's a great name. It's a good disease to have, but we've all got it. We love a bit of nostalgia, especially these days where if it's films or sometimes music, where things today just don't feel as good as they did when we were younger. So I think it's a good disease to have in some respects. And the reason I called it that as well is because, as you'll see, all of the artists are a bit old now. There's nothing new on there, so it is all a bit nostalgia.
Well, it's your fantasy festival, Ross, so you can choose who you like. So I'm looking forward to seeing who you do pick. So like I said, you get to pick a venue as well. So you've mentioned that you're a Cockney Red, so maybe we go to Old Trafford, we can go to the Lexington, or we can go back to Madison Square Garden. You can take us wherever you like, Ross. So where are you going to hold Nostalgia is a Disease? It's
a really obscure, random one, but it is, I mentioned it earlier, Claremont Gardens in Esher, in Surrey. It's just, I mean, if you're very old and you've got a National Trust sticker, you're getting free. And it's that sort of place, right? So you wouldn't expect to have Ian Brown playing, and it's got a lovely lake, and there's old people go on walks, and there used to be peacocks there and stuff. And I saw Ian Brown, and at the time I lived about 20 minutes from there. And when the tickets went on sale for that, I was like, Ian Brown's playing like 20 minutes away at this gorgeous, place. I used to go there when I was a kid. Anyway, like I said earlier, I think it was the first time me and my brother were winding each other up, because he was saying Stone Roses would never ever get back together. And I think Ian Brown was kind of cryptically teasing stuff at the time. Right. And I said, I reckon he'll start playing Stone Roses stuff. I don't think the band will get back together, but he'll start playing. Anyway, at Claremont, a fucking Adored starts, and that was incredible. For me, I'd never heard Stone Roses songs played live before, so it's a beautiful, beautiful venue. Yeah, it'd be quite cool because it's got like hills and lakes and shit like that.
Great stuff. So we're going to Claremont Gardens for the first time in this podcast. I'm looking forward to going to a new venue. So I mentioned you only get 5 acts. You've already mentioned loads of great acts, so obviously we can't take them all with us. But before we go through your 5, Ross, any ones that you want to shout out who you love but just haven't been able to make it into Nostalgia is a Disease?
Yeah, there's loads, but I've picked 3 in particular that I'm gutted that I couldn't put on there. Kraftwerk, because they're always fucking immense live. I've been fortunate to see them a couple of times in the last few years at Albert Hall, at Blue Dot, All Points East. This is really difficult. The next 2 bands really should, because they're 2 of my favourite bands ever, but I've not put them in my festival, and that's the Stone Roses and Happy Mondays. And I love them so much, but there's method to my madness.
Okay. I
couldn't put them in.
I must confess, I thought the Stone Roses would be a shoo-in, but I love how the way this podcast never goes the way I think it will. And I like the fact you haven't put them in, because like you said, that with the connotations with Adored, that may have been obvious, although you've said how much of a big fan you are of them. All right, so Kraftwerk, Stone Roses, Happy Mondays aren't coming. They're on the reserve list. Yeah. But maybe in the follow-up, maybe next summer, they get to come to part 2 if part 1 goes well.
And part of it as well is, well, no, I was going to say I've seen like Happy Mondays a shit ton of times, but then all the others, in fact, all of the others, I've seen a lot. So disregard what I'm saying, because I've seen all these bands a shitload of times.
Right, so 2 o'clock then, Claremont Gardens, it's packed, it's a lovely day, Nostalgia Disease is sold out, everyone's looking forward to it. It's time for your opening act to step onto the stage. So Ross, who are going to be your opening act?
So you're a bastard for this, because they're all headliners. I can't, and this is what was so fucking difficult about picking these, because so I've gone with the Flaming Lips, but they should headline any show. Every one of these bands should headline any show that they play at, but I'm going with an explosion of colour, confetti and balloons to start proceedings.
So why them views specifically around the music? You've obviously mentioned your love of Manchester bands and other bands. Flaming Lips kind of seem a bit not as an obvious choice as what some of the other bands might be. So why the Flaming Lips kind of musically for you then, Ross?
Do you know what? I would say that I've got my favourite band is between 3, and it's so hard to pick between them. But it's my favourite 3 bands ever: A New Order, Oasis and the Flaming Lips, for different reasons. With Oasis, I always find it hard to kind of not consider them my favourite band ever, because they were so important to me when I was, especially becoming a teenager. You see Liam Swagger and you think, he's my spirit animal, I want to be like him. Yeah. And I wear pretty green and all the time. And until recently, when I shaved my head, I had hair like him and stuff. So, Oasis had a huge influence over me. New Order New Order / Joy Division, the 2 bands, if you put them in together, are, they've shaped music in a way I don't think any other band, maybe other than the Beatles, have. What Joy Division did for post-punk and the amount of bands that they influenced, and then New Order went and basically, invented dance music in this country and stuff. But the Flaming Lips, probably, if I had to, musically, I'd probably say the Flaming Lips are my favourite band, so that's why they had to be at my festival. And there's so many reasons. They connect with me on an emotional level. They have an ability to say the most profoundly tragic lyrics, but in the most joyous way, and I always feel good. And again, as a live act, it's one of my favourite live bands ever. Just the confetti, the balloons, the madness of it. It's just pure joy, I would say.
Brilliant. So the Flaming Lips, the 4th time they've been picked for a fantasy festival. They've never been picked as an opening act though, Ross. So we're making history on this very episode.
No, I like to be different. So I just thought, what a way to if you have to have one of these bands not be a headliner, what a way to kick off with that kind of race to the prize and an explosion of a wall of noise and colour. I thought that'd be a great way to start.
Brilliant. Going to get open to an amazing start. So Flaming Lips are going to open your fantasy festival, playing from 2 till 3. We'll take a half-hour break, then it'll be 3:30, and time for your Super Seconds act, Ross. So who's going to be your Super Seconds act?
Well, hopefully I've been able to get a few. So my gig would be, or my festival would be very, very well organised. So it'd have a very, very good bar that serves Red Stripe, because that is the I'm not being paid any money by them, by the way. Other beers are available. There's Heineken, for example. But yeah, I get loaded on a few pints and go and see Richard Ashcroft next.
I love it. Do you know what? Richard Ashcroft had only been picked once. I had Dean Dovey on the podcast. He picked the Verve 2 weeks ago. First time the Verve have been picked. And now Ashcroft gets picked again. So I'm loving your work. So very briefly touched about Richard Ashcroft a couple of minutes ago. But why Richard Ashcroft is your Super Seconds act?
Again, when I was thinking about it, originally I did have the Stone Roses in there somewhere. But when I thought about how much I love seeing Ashcroft and how great he is as a front man, and again, he always gets the crowd going, and especially when he's proper on form and proper Mad Richard, you can just tell when he's really, really digging it. And yeah, there's just something. It's a real sing-along night as well. And obviously Stone Roses gigs are and Oasis ones are, but there's just something about belting out Bittersweet Symphony and Lucky Man. But I absolutely fucking love all of his solo stuff as well. I know some people like to slag off some of his work, but I love every single one of his records. And yeah, last year I saw him twice, and it's probably my gigs of last year, the two times I saw him, just always come away feeling absolutely elated. So yeah, he had to be in there.
I know that feeling. I saw him at the Palladium, which I think was 2021, late 2021. Or maybe it was... I was there
both nights of that. Fucking bloody, he was well on form then.
Yeah.
You could just tell that the kind of pent up, missing gigs for all those years with COVID, and he was just absolutely in love with being back. That was a beautiful night.
Yeah, he had a sparkly silver jacket, didn't he, that he came on in, and you could you could tell as soon as he came on, you were like, he's up for this. Like you just knew it, and that was a great show. And it's always great, like,
and the crowd were up for it as well. It was those gigs around that time was when big gigs were first starting to come back, and in particular it was those nights with Richard Ashcroft and New Order at Heaton Park, where you just felt something in the crowd that everyone was almost like really appreciating it, because we've been going to gigs for years and years and years thinking, well, it would never even occur to us that this would end, this would be taken away from us for 2 years, and so there was almost, I remember Heaton Park stopping for a moment going, Jesus, yeah, it's been a few years without big gigs like this, and so I wanted to almost soak in every moment of it. And certainly, and what I love about an Ashcroft gig as well is he's much more subtle than, say, Ian Brown with his Twitter conspiracies and stuff like that. But you just know when he's talking about social credit and stuff like that he's a bit of a libertarian, Ashcroft, and he's anti all that bollocks. So it's always a bit of fun. Always
fun. So Richard Ashcroft makes his second appearance as a solo act, third if you're counting his further appearances. He's going to play from 3:30 till 4:30. We'll take another half-hour break. Then it'll be time for your Midway Madness slot. So an amazing first 2 acts, Ross. But who's going to be your Midway Madness act?
New Order. It's got to be. Obviously, you mentioned them, Heaton Park. Again, fucking brilliant band. I was going to be sneaky and try and see if I could do New Pet Order Shop Boys or whatever the poster read when they did the US tour recently, and try and sneak the two bands in as one. But No, like I said a minute ago, New Order, if not my favourite band, they're top three. So they absolutely had to be in there. And there's I don't know, it probably will split the crowd a little bit. Do you put Blue Monday in or not? I think everyone has to have Blue Monday. It's brilliant. But it's a bit like Wonderwall and Bohemian Rhapsody. Could we do without it? Maybe. But yeah, definitely New Order. Put them in.
I was going to say, it's your fantasy festival, so you get to give the guys a set list. Anything that you'd throw in that might not be so obvious?
Oh, yeah. So they're the band that's doing the album. They're doing Technique.
Oh, they're going to do Technique. Good choice. They get to do Technique. Wow.
That's my favourite New Order record, that.
Great shout. Great album as well. So New Order only making their second Fantastival appearance. Going to take your midway match.
Scandalous. More people should.
New Order do get talked about quite a lot in the missed act section. Quite a lot. Sometimes they've never made it into the five, but they're making it today, so they get to play Technique to the crowd at Claremont Gardens. So 3 acts down, 2 acts left. So your pre-headline act, you're going to get from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. They're going to follow New Order. So Ross, who's going to be your pre-headline act?
Well, so there's been a bit of method to this. So, Flaming Lips was the big explosion of colour and noise, and then Ashcroft with the great vibes and guitars. And then, obviously, New Order's that great crossover of guitars and electronic music. So then we're going to go into the Chemical Brothers next.
Oh, great shout with the Chemical Brothers. So, Chemical Brothers, a bit more dancey. Why are they playing your fantasy festival?
Again, one of the best live acts ever. You never get a shit Chemical Brothers gig. Always and just the sheer noise, the screeching that just goes through your entire head, like your head's about to explode. It's a real kind of out of body experience, I think, being at a Chemical Brothers gig. But I'm sure a lot of people get that from being on other things when they're at a Chemical Brothers gig. But you don't have to be, because the music itself it almost just takes over your body, and like I said, can almost blow your head off. It's just so noisy, and they've just got a way with beats that's unlike anything else. So again, it's one of those that I wish they could be in a headline act, but when I say I'm a headline act, you'll probably know why. So, but yeah, just always one of the best gigs that you can go to.
Great shout. So the third time the Chemical Brothers have been chosen for a fantasy festival. They've also got Bernard Sumner and Ashcroft there, right? Who can come out and obviously guested with them before.
Whoa, hold up.
All right.
They're coming to...
I'm running before I can walk. All right, so the Chemical Brothers are going to play from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Third time playing a fantasy festival. So 1.5 hour break. And it'll be time for your headliners who are going to come out and play between 8:30 and 11 o'clock. Now, I think I know who they're going to be, but I might not, because obviously I haven't met you before this, but you've spoken about one band who I think are going to be your headliners, but they might not be. So, Ross, who are going to be your fantasy festival headliners?
Oh, go on, get Oasis back out the closet. Honestly, purely just to shut people up so that they're never fucking asked that question in interviews ever again. Look, they've done it. They've come back to nostalgia as a disease. They've played their gig. Shut the fuck up now. That's it. On the Oasis thing, I've seen Oasis many times live. Enjoyed it. I love seeing LG do it. We get double the music now. Well, depends if you're a fan of... Noel's new single's really good, I will say that. And obviously Liam's doing his stuff with his solo. So I'm not asked about them getting back together, if I'm honest, because I think we get double the music now. We get double the amount of gigs. You can go see Noel if you want a more like lazy Sunday sort of gig. And if you want a proper rock and roll gig, go see Liam. But I just had to. I constantly live in Pretty Green. Oasis have been with me since I was 10 years old. It would be a crime if I didn't put them in there. So Oasis are headlining Nostalgia is a Disease, which is a perfect name for that band coming out.
That's worked out well. What I do, Ross, when anyone picks Oasis, I ask them what lineup, because to me, they're almost two bands to me, Oasis, when I look back. You've got the early lineup and the later lineup. So your fantasy festival, you can have any lineup that you want. You can even mix a lineup. But who is going to be Oasis 5 then? Obviously you've got Noel and Liam, but who's going to play alongside of them completing the Oasis?
Well, I might kick Noel out of the band. Then it's just BDI. What am I talking about? To be fair, I fucking love BDI. BDI go into my acts that miss out. Or Liam doing a BDI set would have been cool. But yeah, Oasis lineup, obviously, Liam, Noel. I'm going to go drums first because that's Zach Starkey, because I thought he was dead cool. Looked cool, and I think he's probably the best drummer out of the lot. You've got to have Bonehead, haven't you? Andy Bell. I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, fine. So good Oasis lineup there. And again, 2.5 hours. They're getting back together to play Nostalgia is a Disease. So at 11 o'clock, Oasis is going to bring back out the Chemical Brothers, New Order, Richard Ashcroft, and the Flaming Lips. And they'll get to play one song of your choice, Ross. So I might have inadvertently spoilt the surprise or the encore potentially.
So I have cheated here a little bit because it's not one song. Because they're a DJ act, the Chemical Brothers are going to come out and do a mix that's going to incorporate the Test with Ashcroft, Out of Control, Harmony. Noel's going to sing Let It Forever Be, and Wayne Coyne's going to sing The Golden Path. And there you go. All of them, by accident, all of those acts that are in my festival have all performed with the Chemical Brothers.
That's good. I'm just hearing from the Fantastival VAR lot that's been allowed. It's gone through.
Good.
So it's good. We're going through that. All right.
It would be one seamless mix, so it'd be like it's one tune. And yeah, when I was putting it together, I suddenly went, hold on, all of these lot have done a song with the Chemical Brothers, so that makes sense to get them all out, just doing a little medley.
Brilliant. I don't know what Liam's going to do. I'd be watching
Tambourine.
Liam. I'd be watching Liam when it's tambourine. I'll be watching Liam when that's all going on because he can't stand still for a second. But great lineup. Right, let's lock that in then before you change your mind, Ross, because I know how much pain it's caused you. So we've got Nostalgia is a Disease taking place at Claremont Gardens, opening act of the Flaming Lips, Super Seconds, Richard Ashcroft, Midway Madness, New Order playing their album Technique, pre-headline slot, the Chemical Brothers headlining your fantasy festival. We've got Oasis, and for your encore, let's just call it a Chemical Brothers mega mix to get the crowd to remember this one. Ross, sounds like an amazing fantasy festival to me. You happy to sort that into the Fantastival vaults?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great.
I've probably spent more time agonising over this than I have planning out some of the gigs that the Door's going to put on this year. But yeah, it's like I said at the beginning, it's really hard to leave out. There's so many artists you could put in there, but it worked out all nicely in the end with them all working out with the Chemical Brothers and doing the mega mix, as you say.
Yeah, it
sounds like something David Guetta would do, but there you go.
It does. It certainly does. So a great fantasy festival lineup. So Ross, before we end this episode, then we touched upon Adored at the beginning, but like you said, a busy 2023 in place for Adored. So anything you want to push or talk about that you got planned for the year?
Yeah, obviously big one up next is like you said earlier, Shed Project. That's going to be mega. Gaz Whelan, it's going to be a brilliant night. We had Alan McGee doing a Q&A, so it's going to be an acoustic set, an electric set, and Alan McGee doing a Q&A. Like I said, unfortunately, with there's some passport issues with the Canadian Embassy, so we don't have a date for that yet. I'm working with the venue on that one, so anyone that has bought tickets or that's interested, just keep an eye out on that one. We're going to be doing 4 big club nights. You know, sort of, there'll be lots of little club nights going. So, for example, like the New Order one I'm doing at the weekend, that's one of the small ones. But one of the big Adored flagship club nights, 2 at Lexington, 2 at Waiting Room, throughout the course of this year. And what we're going to try and do with those is incorporate, so before the club part, put on some bands. So, for example, I've spoken to a couple of tribute bands, big ones, that everyone will know about doing a couple of slots beforehand, so kind of normal gig times, and then you go into the kind of nightclub bit afterwards. And yeah, that's it really. And there's a few other cool musicians. I don't want to give anything too much away at the moment. There's a few other cool musicians that I'm talking to about putting on gigs, whether it be this year, next year, with different sort of scale. So it depends how ambitious I want to be, but I'm trying to aim for the stars, as they say, and take Adored to the next level.
I love it. Can't wait to see what the year and beyond holds for you. Like we said, Ross, you are on social media. You've got a great website, so if people want to go and give you a follow, let's shout it out one more time. So where can people find Adored?
AdoredClubUK on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and AdoredClubUK.com is the website where you can buy tickets. You can also, and this is another shout out I need to do actually, we've got a really cool Adored shirt from Ace Face. So a few people might know who Ace Face are. They do cool collaborations with various different upcoming artists and stuff. And we've got a really, really cool Adored t-shirt. So I'm going to plug my t-shirt, go and buy it. But yeah, I forgot how I brought them up now. But yeah, that's another shout out. There's so many people as well, actually, that have supported Adored. Whether it be the regulars that come to the live streams, so people like Kat and Lane, Crew now, who's always in the Hacienda, which is what I call, it's a story for another day. We got into some issues with the Hacienda over the naming of that. But yeah, just so shout out to anyone that's ever kind of got involved, supported, come to a gig, come to a live stream, people that do the work in behind the scenes, and I guess my brother for kind of inspiring it all.
Great shout. I hope your brother's enjoyed this. He's been mentioned quite a bit. I hope he's laughing to himself.
Yeah, I know. I've got to stop going on about him, really, because he'll get a big head.
So what a way to end the podcast in. So that is it, everyone. Thanks for listening to the 117th episode of the Fantastival Podcast. And if you've enjoyed this one, you can subscribe on any platform that you like. And if you listen on iTunes, please go and rate the show and give us a star rating. And you can also rate the show on Spotify. Very important that you do if you're enjoying and you're listening. And like Ross said, Adored is on social media. So is the Fantastival Podcast. So please give us a follow. We are on Twitter at FantastivalP. And we can't play music on this podcast, but I'll get some tracks from Ross. We'll make a nice little Spotify playlist, and that'll be in your episode description. And we'll also put the t-shirt links, Ross, in the episode description as well, so that'll be nice and accessible for anyone listening to this. So Ross, massive thank you for coming on. I know, you know, Adored's a brand, and so you don't see so much Ross, you see a lot more Adored. So have you found kind of, I guess, talking about yourself to a certain extent as opposed to the Adored brand on this podcast?
It's firstly, thanks for having me on. It's I love coming on and being able to talk about music. That's the thing that drives me through all of this. It's why I love doing the live streams, because we come together. Music is power, right?
Yeah.
And we come together over the music to share our stories on the live streams. We're always sharing stories of gigs we've been to, bands we've seen, bands we like, bands we fucking hate. You know, whether it's Blur or U2, everyone should hate them because they're shit. Some Blur songs are all right, but Bono's a cunt.
Do you know what? It might surprise you. It might not. U2, and I was saying this the other day, someone had him as a missed act. Both U2 have never been picked for a fantasy festival, ever, on this podcast. And Blur have only been picked once, which is nothing really when you think about it. So, you know.
They're not a festival band, are they?
No.
No. But yeah, it's... So, you know... I don't see it as talking about myself. I don't see myself as being the, you know, super cool, super DJ guy on, you know, when I do the club nights or the streams. It's always about the music, and that's why coming on and talking to you about the bands and the memories and stuff like that is really cool, because that's what music connects people in a way that nothing else can, I think. And we live in a very, without getting on my soapbox and being all political, we live in very, very divided times. So the more we can come together with some good tunes and some good drinks, the better. Yeah, lovely way to end it. Very well articulated there, Ross. Very well put. So that is it. Like I said, I'll be back next week with episode number 118. So please make sure to join me. But until then, stay safe, my Fantastival friends. Please continue to spread word. And that word is Fantastival. Thanks for listening.